Today we're going to continue on with Unit 3-5, Notes on Solving Radical Equations. We already completed number 5 in our last video, and it was really a lengthy equation to solve. So these are equations that have a little bit more to them than just isolating the radical. So let's begin by completing number 1 together. Let's take a look at number 1. It is a radical equation, so the rule of thumb is to try to get the radical isolated as much as we can. And in this case, it looks like we can by subtracting an x on both sides. So we'll end up with 6 minus x equals a radical x. The radical is isolated, so I'm now going to square both sides of my equation to undo the radical. So on the right side, I get an x. But on the left side, I have 6 minus x squared, which means 6 minus x times 6 minus x. So I'm going to have to do double distributive property and get 36 minus 6x minus 6x plus x squared equals x. Combine like terms and put it in standard form. X squared minus 12x plus 36 equals x. I have a squaring, so the only way I know how to solve is to get one side equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract an x on both sides and end up with x squared minus 13x plus 36 equals 0. I'm going to see if I can factor in t-bar and get, let's see, factors of a positive 36, it'll give me negative 13. Yep, negative 9 and a negative 4. T-bar, x is 9, and x is a positive 4. So now what you're supposed to do is actually check your answers. So let's take a look at these answers. If I plug in 9 for x, square root of 9 is 3, and x is 9, and 9 and 3 is 12. 12 does not equal 6. So 9 rejects. I can't have him as an answer. Let's try 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 4 and 2 make 6, so 4 works. So the only answer I have is x equals 4. All right, let's move on to number 2. Let's see if we can isolate that radical. So I'm going to add x to both sides and end up with 3 plus x equals 4 radical x. Let's see, if I divide each side by 4, that's going to be kind of messy on the left. So what I'm going to end up doing is, well, let's try that. Let's divide each side by 4 and see what happens. So I have 3 plus x divided by 4 equals square root of x. Okay, he's isolated. So I'm going to square both sides. Remember what I said. Whenever you square a fraction, you square the numerator and the denominator. So the numerator is going to be 3 plus x squared, and 4 squared is 16 equals x. Okay. 3 plus x squared is 3 plus x times 3 plus x over 16 equals x. All right. I'm running out of room, so I'm going to come up here. I'm going to have to do double distributive property and get 9 plus 3x plus 3x plus x squared over 16 equals x. So I'll end up with x squared plus 6x plus 9 over 16 equals x. Put x over 1, cross multiply. X squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 16x. Oh, I have a squaring, so I'm going to get one side equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract 16x on both sides and end up with x squared minus 10x plus 9 equals 0. Factor in t-bar. X and x. Factors of a positive 9, that'll give me a negative 10. Minus 9 minus 1. T-bar. X comes out to be a 9. X comes out to be a positive 1. What I have to do is check my answers, and just to save a little time on the video, I'm going to tell you that they both work. So, and you already know how to check your answers because I just showed you how to do it in number 1. So we have two answers for number 2. All right, let's go on to number 3. Ooh, that's kind of similar to number 5. And I remember in number 5 what we did is we moved one radical to the other side. So let's do that. So let's subtract 2 radical x minus 8 on both sides. Okay, so I'm going to end up with radical 3x plus 7 equals a negative 2 radical x minus 8. Well, that's as isolated as I'm going to get it. So let's square both sides. Okay, so let's see what we have here. On the left, squaring and square root cancel out, so I get 3x plus 7. On the right, we end up with a negative 2 radical x minus 8 times a negative 2 radical x minus 8. Okay, so 3x plus 7 comes down again. Negative 2 times the negative 2 is a positive 4. Radical x minus 8 times radical x minus 8 is radical x minus 8, the whole thing squared. It's just like when we had, let me write a sidebar here, when we had radical x times radical x, it came out to be radical x squared, which is plain old what? X, okay? So I'm going to erase that now so that's not in my way. So knowing what I just showed you, I'm going to bring down the 3x plus 7 and get 4. Squaring and square root cancel out, so I get just x minus 8. I'm going to distribute through that 4 and get 4x minus 32. I'm going to subtract a 3x on both sides to get the x's on one side. And get 7 equals x minus 32. I'm going to add 32 to both sides and end up with 39 equals x. Now, what am I supposed to do with my answer? You're right, I'm supposed to check it, and in this case it rejects. Well, if it's the only answer that rejects, that means I have an empty set or a null set. There is no answer to this question. Okay, let's go and try number 6. We're going to skip number 4 for today. We're going to go right down to number 6. I want to isolate the radical as much as I can, and honestly, the right side is already isolated. I really can't do anything to the left side, so I'm going to go and try and square both sides. The left side now is a binomial, so that means it's going to be 3 plus radical x times 3 plus radical x. The right side, squaring and square root cancel out, so I get x plus 81. I'm going to do double distributive property on the left and get 9 plus 3 radical x plus 3 radical x plus radical x squared equals x plus 81. Okay, let's see what I've got. 9 plus 6 radical x plus x equals x plus 81. I have no squaring, but I can get the x's on one side, so I'm going to subtract an x on both sides. Oh, by doing that, the x's go away. So I have 9 plus 6 radical x equals 81. I'm going to try to isolate this radical and get, let's see here, I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. And end up with 6 radical x equals 72. Going to divide each side by 6. Radical x equals 12. Oh, I got the radical isolated, so I'm going to square both sides. And end up with x equals 144. Now, what are we supposed to do with our answers? Yes, we're supposed to check it. Well, let's check this one by hand and see what we get. Let's review checking. So if I put 144 in for x, the square root of 144 is 12. 12 and 3 is 15, so the left side of the equation is 15. 144 and 81, so hopefully you have your calculator out. 144 plus 81 will give you 225, and the square root of 225 is also 15, so both sides equal. So my answer is x equals 144. Wow, we did a lot today. We did some pretty big equations. If there's a couple of things you're unsure of, you might want to replay the video and try a couple of them again to make sure that you know what you're doing. If you're still having some problems, please bring your questions to class tomorrow.